Okay folks, so I'm back. I got my fender all ground. You take a look at it. You can see where I welded over where the rivets were. You can see where my welds bit into the fender. I went along my edges. I cleaned up all my rust. The inside of the fender, I really don't worry too much about. Where I did my welding, I'll clean it up with a little wire brush. I'll probably prime it, and then I'll put some seam sealer over this so it just kind of smooths this off in here. And this will just be flat black because this whole thing on the outside is going to be gloss black. Now we're on to the tank. And the tank is in pretty decent shape. There's a few things I wanted to show you about the tank. I bought this bike with this tank and fenders on it. So I know that my tank is good. If you get a tank from a swap meet or something, what I recommend is that you fill it full of water and make sure it doesn't have any leaks. The other way to really make sure you don't have any leaks is to put a good cap on it, and you can take a rag and an air fitting and put a little bit of compressed air in it. And when I say a little bit, I mean like probably 3 to 5 pounds, just enough to pressurize it. Take a spray bottle with some soapy water, spray the tank and pressurize it, and look all around. Spray all your seams and everything, and make sure you don't have any leaks. Because the problem is gasoline will eat anything eventually. So if you got a pinhole or something in here, it'll get in behind your paint job and it'll peel it right off, and it'll just make a mess out of it. So you don't want to do that. So anyways, I know I've got a known good tank here. It does have a ding on the top. The sides and everything are all pretty good. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I'm doing here. So this is where my dent was. Now what I've done is I've taken my pick hammer and I've tapped around the edges of it, because when you get a dent like this, you end up with a pressure ridge here, and you don't want that. So what I did was I took my pick hammer and I went around the edge like this and got it flat. Then I took my body file and I went over my areas like this with my body file. That's going to show me all my high spots. There is still a little depression right here. I'm not going to chase that. I mean, it's literally hardly anything at all. I am going to feel this all 4 ways rather, so that I know that I don't have any high spots. High spots are going to be your enemy. If you have a low spot, it'll fill right in with body filler. If you got a high spot, once you start sanding your filler, you're going to have to tap that down. That means you're probably going to have to apply some more filler. You really don't want to do that. So at this point, I've taken my file and I filed over the top of this really good and chased out my high spots and tapped them down with the pick end of my hammer, and I'm good. So this is basically pretty much ready to go. I'm going to take and strip this like I did the fender, like I did the front fender, and I'm going to leave the bottom of it alone because I'm going to just spray this bottom flat black because this is going to be a gloss black. So that's going to take care of my tank. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stripped, and we'll move on to the next segment. Now I'm into my rear fender. Now we had a little damage that happened with this fender. It's got a good crease right here that's torn. It's got a couple more over here. It looks like it tore right through. There's a couple of creases here, a few ding-dongs on the top, and then you always end up with some distortion around these bolts. Nothing you're really going to worry about because the strut cover is going to cover it, but I do take a flat dolly and I hammer this out flat just so it's nice and smooth. So that when I do sand it, I don't cut through the edges where the bolt peeled the metal up and created an edge. So I've already dollied that out. If you can see right here, I'll bring it in close. This right here is a pretty good crease. I hammered and dollied it flat, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grind this fender. It looks like we got a hole in the fender here too. What I think happened with this fender was, this is an old Sportster with a chain drive. I think the chain might have come off of the sprockets and then went up inside the fender. It probably got caught between the tire and the fender and caused this damage. So I'm going to take and grind these areas down, get a good look at it. We'll have to take the MIG welder and weld those tears up, and then we can pretty much do the same thing we've done with the fender and the tank. I'm back. I took my rear fender and I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I stripped all the paint off of it with the grinder. But I am going to show you some spots here. Like right here this is actually avoiding the fender. It's cut right there, and then I got one right here. So what I've done is I've taken my hammer and dolly and hammered and dollied pieces flat like this. Now I do have some other areas I got to play with a little bit, But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my MIG welder and I'm going to weld up these cracks that are in the fender, and then I can grind that down, and then I can hammer and dolly the whole top of this fender and probably use my body file on it to get it pretty smooth, and then we'll move to some body. Folks, I'm back again. You can see where I welded here and welded here to weld those holes up. I'm going to take the grinder, I'm going to grind that down nice and smooth, and then I'll work on some hammer and dolly of this area, and then we'll go from there. Looks like I get a little wave-o on the bottom of this fender too. My welded areas ground down. You got to remember, when this fender's on the bike, this area here is going to be way under the seat. Seat's going to bolt on back here, so really when you're chasing after your stuff, you can think about it. I mean, you got the struts here, your seat comes back, your driver's seat comes back to here, your passenger seat's here. So, I mean, depending upon what your configuration is, there's certain areas of the fender that you're never going to see, so you may not have to chase it. So what I did now is I'm feeling over the top of this, and I have a couple of what I think are high spots, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to take my body file, and I'm going to go along this fender. And as I go along my fender, what's going to happen is, what you're going to see is all your high spots. So what a lot of guys talk about, you'll hear body men talk about picking and filing, that's what this is. So basically I'm going to file along like this to find my high spot, and sometimes it's just a little bit of a high spot and a little bit of filing and it's gone. Sometimes it really sticks up. That's where you take the pick end of your hammer, tap down that little spot, and then continue. If you were doing like a show car restoration or something like that, you didn't want any body filler, you can pick and file your way, as long as the metal's thick enough, to completely paint smooth. That's not what I'm after right now. I want something that's really nice. It's going to go on a bike that's sub $5,000, so me spending, hours on end picking and filing something just doesn't make financial sense. A high spot here, got my dolly on the back side, I got my hammer here, hold your dolly fairly firm, but when it hits you kind of let it bounce and it kind of like flattens things out for you. I got another spot over here that I can feel, I'm going to do the same thing. And then, once again, you hit it with a file, and it knocks down all your high spots, it shows you your low spot, and you just progress along like this. Like I got a pretty good high spot right here. I'm going to use the dish side of my dolly, and I'm going to use the pick end of my hammer and just pick that area down a little bit. Now when I go back over it, it smooths that right out. So, there we go. So this is what I have. Everywhere you can see where the file is smooth things over. I mean, this feels pretty good. I mean, a little bit of body filler on here. I mean, I got a little low spot there. But for me to tap this from the back side, it's going to raise this whole area around here. Then I'd have to put the dolly under there, dolly it flat. I could chase it, but I mean, this is pretty minuscule. A little skosh of body filler on there will be fine. Now here's a ridge that I have right here. And if you, see if I can do this with you. If I run the file over this, you can kind of, now it's going to show me my high spot right there. So what I'll do is I'll take my dolly, put it on the back side, I'll pick this little area right here, then when I come back and hit it with the file again, it'll be pretty smooth. That's what I'll do right now. I'm just going to go like this. Kick this down just a little bit. Hit it with my file. looks pretty good. So I'll show it to you here. And there we go. So I do have a little bit of a low spot right in this area, but this is nice and smooth here, and this is nice and smooth there, and like here is good, here is good. I got just a touch of a low spot. I'll just let my filler take care of that. I'm going to continue on with this process down here. Folks, so I want to come on back on the camera real quick and just show you a couple of tricks that I do use. On top of this fender, there's two threaded holes. One is for the back of the driver's seat, one is for the back of the passenger seat. If you're running a solo seat and a pillion pad. Either way, you need both of these. So what I like to do is before I get involved in doing any body work or anything, I want to make sure that these threads are good, because if these are wiped out, I'm going to want to grind and knock this nut off and weld a new nut in here so that it's all set. But this all looks good. So what I'm doing is I've chased these bolt holes out with a tap. These are fine thread 1/4 inch 24s. So I chased it out with my tap, and now I know these threads are clean. So one of the things I'm going to do next is I'm going to get a bolt, a fine thread 1/4 inch bolt. I'm going to thread it in from the bottom so it's flush with the top of my fender. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to put body filler over the top of this, and I don't want to fill my bolt hole. If I put that bolt there and make it fairly flush with the surface, I can come over the top of this, I can do my body work, I can put my filler right over the top of it. I don't have to worry about filling this hole. When I'm done, I just take my bolt out, clean out this hole a little bit, and we're good to go. So that was a little trick I just wanted to come on and show you.